We're on.
We're on.
We're on.
Episode number 11. Anxiety.
Jibbity job and the jobby jippin'.
Jibbity job in the jobby pivot.
Piffity piffin, the piff is sniffing.
I don't do sniffing anymore, Greg.
Greg. So yeah, welcome to Demons Within.
You as?
Episode 11. How you doing, Peter?
Good. Got anxiety.
Do you? So do I. Which is, what a coincidence. That's what we're talking about today. Yeah, anxiety. It's a prevalent issue in America, in the world, in our brains. So yeah, I mean, I do want to just start. This is totally not about anxiety, but there were some people asking. I posted last week some pictures of me shirtless from when I was in my 30s, when I was slaying.
Shit.
And I was just utterly ripped. But I just want to point out that that's not healthy to maintain that level of body fat. Like, I was starving myself, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I looked fantastic. And the women loved it. The women loved the washboard abs. They were all coming over to do laundry on my stomach.
I don't got no abs.
Yeah.
Come on, P.
You got one ab. It's just big.
Yeah.
No, you look good, man.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome, Peter. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out because a couple people did say something like, wow, how did you do that? Well, the answer is starving yourself and being unhealthy. I mean, maintaining that level of body fat is, for men especially, like, you need a certain amount of body fat to regulate your hormones. So despite looking like I was all muscly, all muscular, which I was, but like I probably had no testosterone.
What'd you eat?
I ate like canned chicken and tuna and vegetables, and I would have like complex carbohydrates around my workout, so like oatmeal, and then I would have a Gatorade after, more of a simple high glycemic carbohydrate, which would replenish the glycogen in my muscle stores. Just so you know, Peter.
Don't know what that means.
And that was about it as far as carbs, though. And carbs are good. I mean, anything you eat can be good as long as you eat it in moderation and you eat it within your caloric intake goals.
What about banana bread?
Banana bread? I've been
savaging banana bread.
Yeah, banana bread is hot right now.
Yeah.
My mom just made a few loaves.
Well, when I get anxiety, now that I'm not drinking, I eat.
Yeah. I
eat a fucking shit ton.
Yeah. We've actually both been talking about how disgusting we've been at our late night snacking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it always makes for an interesting morning, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's like my bathroom's like fucking Pompeii. Yeah. My ass is like Mount Vesuvius, spraying ash and fire and brimstone all over the toilet bowl. But yeah, so that's not really a good way to live. What else is new? Well, I found, well, I'm not going to get in, that's next, but I think I discovered a PED for golf, a performance enhancing drug for golf, because I've always been on like the cusp of high blood pressure for the past few years. A lot of that had to do with the absolute pounding I did to my body when I'd be in my drinking days. Mm-hmm. I mean, binge drinking, drug use, obviously, inactivity, eating a lot of crap, grub hubbing it every day. Mm-hmm. That's not good for you. So my blood pressure was on the cusp of being like, we got to do something. But I finally got a mild medication for it, and it has improved my golf game.
No.
Because I have no physical symptoms of, even when I wasn't feeling I like don't feel nervous. I golf with my brother and dad a lot, so I'm always mad comfortable, but I could feel like heart rate would go up a little bit, like I was like putting for a major championship when I'm not. And so this medication eliminates that, and I was just striping the ball.
Nice.
So calm, casually walking up like, yeah, I'm just going to hit this ball. I'm just going to hit the ball. And I played well.
I don't know how to golf.
Yeah, you just got to, you got to just swing a club at a ball and get it in a hole.
Yeah.
Just like sex. So.
I was going to say something on that.
Yeah. So I guess the only other thing, I just do want to touch on the little run-in we had yesterday.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
And me and Peter, we were going over to the old Starbucks, got a little meeting in store, and I ran into She Who Will Not Be Named. Those familiar with our programming know She Who Will Not Be Named. And, there was vitriol. It wasn't pleasant, but we mostly held it together. But after we saw this person and her two comrades, because they're communists. So after we saw them, though, it was like pretty unpleasant, but it wasn't bad. And then me and Pete, we already got our coffee. We sit down waiting for our business associate for our investor meeting.
Yeah,
and they come out and sit right next to us. Within inches of Pete. Yeah. And like, there's sort of an understanding and agreement between me and her dad, who me and her dad are still friendly, really friendly. We really like each other. And it was just insane. that they would do that. And the one thing I did learn though from it is that I have genuine hatred for this person. I don't want that. It like triggered this deep-seated hatred that I have for her, which is unhealthy to hold on to. So I am going to be devoting the next like 1 to 2 months exclusively to getting rid of that hate. I want to get to a point where, well, I mean, the goal in any breakup is to just get to the point where there's no emotion one way or the other. Just this person exists, this person's alive, I wish him well. But I've realized I'm not there. I just feel hatred.
Yeah, that's a tough place to get to.
Yeah, it's gross. It's gross to hate someone, especially a normal person. Like, I hate terrorists. I hate pedophiles. I mean,
I've been broken up with the girl I went out with for 10 years, for 5 years now. I still have a grudge.
Yeah.
I still love her and whatever, but I still...
Yeah, there's still feelings there. And that's kind of, even with this one, it's like I'm saying now that I just hate her. But the truth is there's still some lingering feelings in some capacity that I need to explore because I don't want to hate her. Mm-hmm. I mean, every other aspect of my life, I really practice what I preach. Yep. And I see it on a daily basis. I pat myself on the back, even for minor things like someone cutting me off in traffic. I mean, I would have been mad about that for an hour, maybe even more back in the day. Or even like interactions with family. Like last week on the podcast, that pipe just started running water.
Yep.
And I would have been mad at the person who was responsible for that, even though there was no ill intent and it was just a thing that happened and it's out of my control.
Yeah.
So I think...
Started off with anxiety.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, a big thing with anxiety. And I think I'm going to start with how the Stoics talk about anxiety, because the Stoic philosophy is really just understanding that the vast majority of things in your life are out of control. This book, this is Meditations. It's a newer translation. It's called The Emperor's Handbook, but it's Marcus Aurelius, at the time that he was alive, he was the most powerful man in the entire world. He was the emperor of Rome. And he used to journal, and he journaled never expecting anybody to read it. And way and it's one of the reasons Stoicism is so profound, because the things this man was saying, he had normal thoughts of everyone, of a normal person, but he was not a normal person. And one of his quotes about anxiety, I even made a whole song about it, essentially. It's on the YouTube channel. It's called Today I Escaped Anxiety, because he has this quote. It's, "Today I escaped anxiety," or "No, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions." Because he believed that we should focus on what we can control and not worry about the things that are beyond our control, because anxiety is all in the brain. Mm-hmm. It's all in the mind. So yeah, this is a good book. I recommend it to everyone. I mean, this book actually, like James Mattis, who was a Secretary of Defense, he always carried a copy on him. Bill Clinton always had a copy on him. A couple prime ministers, I think he was like the prime minister of China or something. He read it over 100 times. There's also a ton of translations. I wouldn't recommend getting the one that is like free PDF. You want to get a good one. Ryan Holiday has a good one. This is a good one. This is by Scott Hicks and David Hicks.
Yeah, you gotta check that out.
Yeah, you should. I can give you that one.
Yeah.
So, Peter.
Anxiety definitely hits home for me. I think for me, in any outside situation when I'm being social, I take things to the extreme. My anxiety gets to a level where it's almost unbearable. And if I'm out in public, I always feel like something is going to pop off and something bad is going to happen, something violent. And then I feel like I'm going to have to become violent. And I take it to the level of kill or be killed. And that's from the condition that I have. And that's why I drank the way I did, because I had to relieve myself of not thinking something horrible was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think because anxiety,
does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. And the thing is, the anxiety often triggers the fight or flight response. And I know you are a fighter.
Yep.
And that's the thing. So I know even the thing that happened yesterday at the Starbucks, we were both laughing after, because you were saying, like, in your head, you were planning every possible scenario in case, because there was a guy with him. He was, he's barely a guy. He's not a tough guy, but like, you didn't know him. And like, I know you were just ready for him to do something.
Ready for
anything. You were ready for me to do something too, because the old me, like the old me was unhinged, and I could feel like I was getting close to that. But anxiety's a crazy thing though, because everyone knows what it is. It's just like this feeling of dread, this feeling of unease that's just fills you up like black tendrils of ink that blot out, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not fun. I mean, I've noticed too a big thing. When I would get anxiety, it was like my anxiety I would recognize I have anxiety, and that would cause more anxiety. It was like anxiety inception.
Yeah.
It was like
Oh,
anxiety inception. It's like my brain was a Christopher Nolan movie, and I would get deeper and deeper into the anxiety. It was just the worst. And then like, I know for me, I would get like heart palpitations, which again makes everything worse. It's like when you have anxiety, even the slightest thing that might seem off just makes your anxiety worse. And I certainly drank to deal with anxiety.
Yeah. Also social anxiety. Just
Yeah.
being out in the public.
Well, that was another thing too that I liked drinking, because it's like at one point it's like I found myself, I was always wearing masks just to fit in and to do what I
Facts.
thought I would try to be the person I thought I had to be to get acceptance or validation from whatever group of people that I wanted to be with, that I wanted to hang out with, that I wanted to be accepted in. And having to set yourself up to play a role that's not actually who you are, that alone's anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
And that alone led to me carrying little bottles in my pocket so I could go to the bathroom and rip a shot and just loosen up, get that warm feeling. And it's I mean, that's the thing with alcohol. It is a great treatment acutely. Like, it's a great acute treatment for anxiety, because it does relieve anxiety real quick. It's just, it has disastrous results long term.
It was the only thing that took away my anxiety. I've been on medications for years.
Yeah.
And drinking was really my savior.
Yeah. Well, me too, because alcohol, it suppresses the part of your brain that has to deal with inhibitions. So that's why it's often called liquid courage, because any type of anxiety you have, it just covers it up.
Yeah.
And you just don't care. It just lowers your inhibition. And then for some other like negative emotions, it sort of intensifies them for people. That's why on the other side of that coin, while it would relieve any social anxiety I had, it also would make me not give a fuck about the anger I might have been carrying. And that anger would explode out of me, as I've said many times. I mean, anxiety too, it's tough because it's all in your head, but it's very hard to get out of it. And especially because there's legitimate anxiety, like generalized anxiety disorder is probably the most common one, but there's like crippling clinical anxiety where you literally need all sorts of stuff. You need medication, you need treatment, you know?
Yeah, sounds like me.
Yeah. Sounds like old job, Peter.
Yeah, no.
But I want to definitely talk about, because alcohol is so commonly used for anxiety, I want to talk about how it's actually bad for anxiety. And that's what I'm going to do right now.
I guess I want people to know who have PTSD that they're not alone in feeling those things when you go out and you have social anxiety and you needed to have that drink. I've been through it. I've been there, but it does not help. If anything, drinking made my anxiety worse and worse, and it made me do things that I regret to this day. So you have to deal with your problems face on. You cannot hide them with alcohol. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And the truth is, like, if you're ever at a bar or anything, I can guarantee you well over half the people there have some form of social anxiety. But as Pete was saying, it's not the way to deal with it, because over time, if that's how you consistently deal with it, like, there's a very delicate balance of chemicals in your brain. And if you're suppressing certain ones with alcohol, especially ones that have to do with anxiety, you do become unknowingly dependent on that to deal with your anxiety. And then next thing you know, when you're not drinking, certain situations that in the past you had absolutely no trouble with, where you're totally comfortable, suddenly those things are problems. Suddenly you might find yourself avoiding those situations or having drinks to loosen up. And that's why it's a problem, especially if it creeps into your life, like your work life. If you suddenly find yourself, like, you have a big meeting, a presentation, investor relations thing, and like you suddenly introduce alcohol to your like pre-game ritual.
That's what I did.
Then it becomes a problem, because
because my thought process is that when I go to have a meeting, I'm like, this meeting's going to end up horrible, blah, 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 blah. And then I would have to have a drink.
Yeah.
Right before the meeting. And that never happened before. I used to be confident as fuck. But then when I started drinking heavily, I would have the 3 shooters of Red Bull in my pocket. I have to rip them before meetings. which was horrible. I never had that problem before. So that's a great point, that alcohol can really sneak up on you. It can make you lose confidence on things that you used to have confidence for.
Yeah.
And I'm a prime example of that.
Yeah. And I've been there
Fucking
too.
anxiety.
Yeah. I will fight.
Be a fighter.
I will fight anxiety. But that, I mean, for me, it's like probably the most comfortable people I could ever be around is my family. I mean, I've grown up with my family. We're a pretty close family. And my family, I'm grateful of how supportive they've been to me despite all the things I've done while in active alcoholism. But even then, I would never feel uncomfortable. But it got to a point where, like, if I had a family gathering or a party to attend, I would have a bottle of liquor up in my old bedroom hidden under the bed, and I'd go upstairs periodically and sip off of it. And this is with people that I'm so comfortable with, who know, I mean, I think the only person in the world who knows more about me is Pete. And that's because we were in the mud together.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, that sounded kind of gay.
No, I get
We were rolling around in the mud together.
I don't swim.
Not even in mud. But yeah, so that's kind of how it goes. And then if you also have either some type of past trauma or you have that genetic disposition to alcoholism, it's just like you're in for a rude awakening. And some people, it takes a little longer to get there, but unless you take action, you will get there. You will get there. And the problem with the disease of alcoholism and addiction, once you get there, then you got to take even more action to get out of there, or you will be dead. You will die, or you'll be in jail. But whatever, either of those things are not really the way anyone wants to live life.
Yeah, and you have to attack the things that you're scared of. If you're anxious about something, whether it's going to a meeting or going to the track like we did, you have to do things that are going to make you feel uncomfortable in order to evolve. It's just how it is.
Yeah. That's the thing too, facing it head on. And we're going to go over some simple techniques that can be used if you find yourself on the verge of some type of anxiety. But what Pete said is the number one way. It's the hardest way to deal with it, but it's the most effective in my opinion, and that's facing it. It's like, I think of anything, even like when I was a kid, I was scared of roller coasters, like a young kid. And I would have anxiety anytime we'd go up to Six Flags or The Great Escape or Disney World. And for that, I was like, finally, I was mad nervous. It was probably like 6. And I just did it. And then I loved roller coasters. And I mean, that's sort of, that's like an example. I don't even know. But that same thing can be applied to anything. It's like, even like I've had jobs too where I'd have to give pitches or presentations or something, and I'd have massive anxiety at the beginning, and I was so good at hiding it. People thought I was so smooth up there, and I was, but in my brain I was going crazy. My heart was beating out my chest. But then even that, it's like after a couple, I'd be good, and then it just becomes like, all right, I can do this. I've gotten through it. It's like not the end of the world, but I think the vast majority of anxiety is based around social interactions or interpersonal relationships. It's why like 70% of the population is their number one fear is public speaking over death.
Oh, no shit.
And that's all anxiety based. And then, I mean, fear is anxiety based and anxiety is fear based. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's deep. That's good.
Yeah, it's no way to live life, Peter.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
So how do you deal with it, Greg?
Well,
I need to learn.
Yeah.
Teach me.
I will teach you job, Peter. Job. Well, I do have a bunch of tips, things I do. Pretty standard stuff here. There's this thing called the 3-3-3 rule.
Oh, I was reading that. I got to try that.
Yeah, so the 3-3-3 rule, you basically use it in the moment if something's triggering your anxiety. And it involves looking around your environment, and you identify 3 objects and 3 sounds, then moving 3 body parts. So it's the point of that is to center yourself in the present moment, because whenever you realize that the only thing that actually exists right now is the present moment and that you're safe. I mean, a lot of people's anxiety tends to crop up besides the social situations, which actually the anxiety of social situations normally starts before you even get to the social situation. You start ruminating about everything that could go wrong. So if you do that, it can sort of set you up so you're a little calmer. It's like you focus, like down here, it'd be like, all right, there's a book. there's the New York Giants water bottle, go Giants, and here's a microphone. And then I would focus on like this, there's like a trickling sound back there. Like basically anything to get you back in the moment, and then you just move around. Eckhart Tolle is big on that too, when it comes to being in the now. Focus on the energy in your body. Like if you just focus on like your hand and you feel the energy, it works for me. And I feel so present. I don't know if it works for everybody, but I would give it a try if you're struggling with anxiety. And the other thing too, I'm certainly not a doctor, but anxiety is one of the problems that I think taking a multifaceted approach is helpful. Like getting some type of medication. There's a lot of medications, and then there's some like the benzos you got to be careful with. But there's the SSRIs. I am told help with anxiety. They do shit for anxiety for me. It actually just made me mad. I would take my they'd be like, every time I would go to a psychiatrist, and they'd be like, "What's your main symptom?" I'd be like, "Anger." And they'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna put you on Lexapro." I'd be like, "That makes me madder." And then I would go to the next psychiatrist and I'd tell them that, and they'd be like, "How about Lexapro?" And I'd be like, "Now you're pissing me off. What's with the Lexapro?" So that was who I used to be. But yeah, I don't know. So that's one thing. So the 3-3-3 rule is effective. They also have other ones where you like close your eyes and count to 10, or like close your eyes and do the thing where you take breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose and exhale for 8 seconds. Stuff like that. Cause I was reading this study or watching this podcast, and they were talking about the connection between carbon dioxide in your brain that contributes to anxiety. So people might not realize it, but they're not really taking full breaths throughout the day, because your breathing's autonomous. You're on autopilot when you're breathing. You don't have to like think about it. So some people, they don't even realize that they're kind of taking shallow breaths and your brain's not getting enough oxygen, and that can cause anxiety. Oh shit. Yeah, it was very interesting. So if that podcast spreads out, you're just going to see everyone walking around like, because that's what I did for like a week. For a week after that, that's all I was doing. People thought I don't know what they thought. Just thought, look at that. There's that breathing guy walking down the street. There's the big ass breather. So, another thing too, you and me vape. We're in the process of quitting. Yeah, I got to quit. But stuff like that can cause anxiety, nicotine consumption.
I never knew that nicotine or tobacco was a stimulant. Or smoking cigarettes or vaping. I never knew it was a stimulant.
I never did either.
Until my therapist told me.
Yeah. Well, it is too. And the thing about nicotine that's crazy is a lot of people, when they get stressed out, they're like, "Oh, I need a smoke break." And I feel like that always...
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it, because you need a smoke break, and then you just go outside and get more amped up. Yeah. Just like, I'm ramped up right now. I just hit the vape.
Yeah, guy's ready to run through a wall. Pete planning every possible outcome at the Starbucks incident. Dude, I wish something happened just to see you spring into action. Yeah. It would have been so great. Oh, we would have beat the fuck out of those girls. We never would hit a woman.
No, never.
Ever. I feel like even if a woman hit me, I wouldn't even hit him back.
No, of course not.
No. I would just do the thing you do to little kids where you like hold their head and they're like swinging over your arm. I would do that. Although, like you said, the one girl is jacked.
Yeah, I thought we might have a tough time.
Yeah, I don't know.
We might have a tough time with those.
They're also like they are part of that cult I always talk about, the CrossFit. They're so cardiovascularly, like their work capacity is much more than ours. We'd be mad tired after like 20 seconds, and they'd be like, "You're done?" Yeah. They'd be doing push-ups in between punches. Yeah, they're in pretty good shape. Well, the one though, I found disgusting. Yeah. Yeah, this is why I got to work on all this stuff. I'm still going on about it. But speaking of that, physical activity is a huge way to get rid of anxiety. It just releases all the endorphins, the adrenaline. I think it lowers cortisol. It might raise it. I don't really know. I'm not an expert. Whatever it actually does, I'll put it on the screen because I don't want to be giving out false information. But it does it. All sorts of physiological things go on while you're doing a workout, especially a hard, high-intensity workout. And then afterwards, you generally feel okay.
One of the things that really helps with my anxiety is having a support system of someone I can talk to when I'm feeling extremely anxious. You have to build a support system. Yeah. You have to tell people how you feel, someone you can confide in, because they can give you a realistic view of what you're thinking without your own crazy thoughts going on in your head.
Yeah.
Because if someone like me, if we're in an argument, I think we're going to have to murder one another. That's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
And when I kind of talk about that, I realize how ridiculous that sounds. And it kind of makes me think that, wow, maybe this argument isn't going to turn into a murder.
Yeah. No, I feel you. And especially the support system. Like I talk to you if I ever have stress or anxiety. I talk to I do have a therapist. I have a sponsor. I have my family. But it's funny that you say in the argument and it's going to turn into a murder. So that reminds me, like back in the day, I was driving somewhere. I was pulling out of my street and my neighbor, who's like 28-year-old guy, I like cut him off unknowingly and he got mad pissed and he was like riding my ass. And then he like ended up just driving by. And this is when I had my Camaro. So immediately I'm like pegged as like an asshole.
Yeah.
Because I was revving the engine. And then I remember I was pissed off and I did start having anxiety and I was talking to my mom. I was like, so what? Like now every time I see him outside, I have to fight him. And it's like, that's insane.
Yeah.
I actually, the incident was never brought up again. And I don't see him that often, but when I'm at my parents' house and I do, we wave. What's up, man? How you been? And at that time, my anxiety about the situation was
you want to fight him.
I have to fight him every time I see him.
Yeah.
Because of that stupid incident.
And really, that was never going to happen.
No, it never was going to happen. It's just a preposterous way of thinking. And I think that's the same thing. It's like just poor emotional regulation and just the inability to cope with the anxiety. And then it just makes it worse.
And where I was going with the support system too is that I take a walk every morning with my mother. And just a simple walk, just to clear your mind in nature, for me, it does wonders. Yeah. So walk, do something.
That's the thing too. You get out in nature. If you just can kind of take it all in, you realize that we're not that important. We're not the center of the world. It's like, if you ever look at what we actually are, we're these little weird looking living creatures on a ball spinning in infinite space. Mm-hmm. Who gives a fuck about our anxiety? Nobody.
Ring.
Imagine that's like somebody who's like, hey, I heard you were talking about anxiety.
Ring.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this in. Just a little phone call. I didn't even know there was a phone in the studio. I did not know I had a phone in the studio. That's not my ringtone.
It's giving me anxiety.
But yeah, getting out in nature is huge because of that very fact. That's also a Stoic technique. Called the view from above. There's an actual Greek or Roman Latin term for it, but that's what you do. You visualize yourself and like, I'm sitting in this chair, and then you keep sort of zooming out. It's like, all right, I'm sitting in this chair. I'm in this town, which is in the state, and then in the country, which is in the world. And then you keep going out. The world's in the solar system. The solar system's in the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy is in the universe. And then you realize just how small and insignificant you are.
Yeah, it's deep.
So these problems, what? Like, who cares? And, a lot of these techniques for people with just sort of a generalized, minor, always sort of in the background anxiety, these things help for that. They help me. And like I always say, it's not medical advice because we're not doctors, but it's stuff it works for me. It works a lot for me. The last two things, I always kind of put these two things hand in hand, even when I'm talking about routine, and it's focus on your sleep. Like, make sleep a priority.
Yeah.
And eat healthy.
Yes. No, sleep is just big. I don't get enough sleep. I wake up, I have nightmares, anxiety. Luckily I'm on the right medication. That's why medication is so important. And going to see someone and talking to someone and getting prescribed the right medication. But sleep, not getting enough sleep was horrible for my anxiety. That's all I got to say. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. When you're not sleeping well, you're already starting from a deficit.
Yeah.
Your brain's not fully refreshed. I mean, sleep's the most revitalizing thing that you can do naturally. And that's the same with eating healthy, or at least eating sort of consistently and not overindulging. At this point, the only thing I do that occasionally throws me off, like I think I've mentioned before, the closest thing I ever feel to a hangover is when I just eat like a savage at night, and then I wake up and feel like crap. And those are the days where it's harder to get out of bed. And those are also the days where getting out of bed's the most important, and how you deal with that How you get rid of that anxiety is what separates the men from the boys, or the women from the girls, or the theys from the thems. So got to be inclusive today. And for the record, that's a joke. I'm totally pro whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to be. And if I ever call you the wrong thing, just let me know, and I'll do what I can to not call you that anymore. I just think well, we're not going to go off on a tangent about that stuff. That's another thing I'm not qualified to talk about. I've always just been a hey. I've been a well, and that's the thing too. I definitely always encourage. I mean, if you're finding that these difficulties in your anxiety is really debilitating, really getting in the way of you living the life that you are supposed to be living, you definitely should see a qualified therapist or psychiatrist, because medication helps. I know it does. And
you can learn.
And like medication too, I do think medication really just treats the symptoms of anxiety. So you do have to do other work on your, you got to do the meditation and the sleeping prioritization and the eating healthy and the physical activity, getting out in nature. You got to do all that too to actually sort of deal with the underlying cause of the anxiety. But the medication helps you do that too, because it treats the symptoms. It's hard to do that stuff when you're just brutally anxious. It's hard. Actually, when I'm really anxious, the last place I want to be is outside.
Yeah.
I want to be in my room watching YouTube videos about working out and movies and shit.
Yeah.
And that's like Pete just said, you can learn. That's sort of the last tip I have. Learn about your disorder.
Yeah.
I do that all. I mean, I currently don't have an anxiety diagnosis, but I did in the past. I know Peter does. I think last episode I talked about that Tracy Marks woman. She's the psychiatrist on YouTube.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah, she's really good. I know, Pete, you watched a couple, right?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
And I've learned a lot about some of my behaviors in the past, and it helped me to process them. Because a lot of times with alcoholics or addicts, you do a lot of shitty stuff.
Yeah, and you learn why you did it, and that will give you the opportunity to say no that time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. And I've learned that when I was in active alcoholism, especially in relationships, whether it's romantic or just interpersonal relationships, if I would get triggered, I would exhibit borderline personality traits. I don't have borderline personality disorder, because it's just, I would exhibit some traits that are sort of on the cusp of borderline personality disorder. So when I learned that, then I was able to really focus on in that now in post-drinking life, in my life of recovery, because I don't want that stuff. Like, just because I was doing that stuff in active alcoholism, it doesn't mean those things couldn't rear their head while I'm not drinking.
Oh, of course.
But now that I'm aware of it and I know where that stuff comes from, I have not had any of that. Most of this, like the Starbucks situation yesterday, I felt really close to those patterns coming out, which is why I'm devoting so much time to relinquishing that hatred I have for she will not be named. But learn about the disorder. Meditate.
Learn as much as you can, because the more you learn, you learn how to regulate your emotions.
Yeah. And the more you know.
Let's talk about the smell article.
Yeah, so we're going to continue on with our new segment about the news. And I love finding, when I look for news articles, I specifically look for ones that will throw Job Pete for a loop.
I hated this article. I don't hate anything.
I hate one person.
I'm a nice guy. But this article annoyed me.
Yeah, this article says...
I wanted to call Greg at 3 a.m. when I was reading it and say, why am I reading an article about smell?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. This article is saying that they did this massive study and they determined that a poor sense of smell is linked to an increased risk of depression in older adults. That's insane. Especially, I'm like, older adults, like how old? Like you live in a nursing home? I wouldn't want to smell any of that stuff. Leave it out of the nose.
They had 1,200 patients that they did this with to test their smell.
I just don't understand it at all. And even in modern times.
I was walking around. See, I was trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, just sniffing around town. It's like back in the day when we used to do that, it was a whole different routine. But like now, I just don't understand it at all. It's like, so I just don't, I feel like if you smell too much, if you have a great sense of smell, that's more likely to be depressed because you smell everything that stinks.
It's a confusing article. It said that if you notice you're not smelling enough lately, it says more like your mortality. Like you could be dying. That's what I'm reading at 3 a.m., Greg.
Yeah, I
What the
know.
fuck?
Like I said, I like to throw you for a loop. I honestly though think it's like, did they also do compare the weight of these people? Because I feel like these people who are like morbidly obese, they can't smell good because they got such big necks and they're like, oh. And then like they die, and now they're blaming it on them not smelling.
What was the whole purpose of the article, though?
The purpose?
Poor sense of smell linked to increased risk of depression in older adults.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the headline.
They say it has something to do with altering your serotonin levels, which I don't know how, and then behavioral stuff, reduce social function and appetite, which again, it's like when I'm at social functions, I don't want to be smelling everybody. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, what does that even mean? And even the appetite thing, I guess I can tell. Like, when you walk in, like if I go to my parents' house, my mom's got a nice Italian sauce on the stove. It smells so good. I was at your house the other day and that happened. So yeah, I'm grateful I can smell when I'm in that situation. But it's like, what if you walk into a house and somebody just like blew up the bathroom and it stinks? That alone will cause me to have anxiety, depression, and I want to escape. I want to go home and shower. Because that's really what smell is little particles. So I just want everybody to know, when you smell someone's fart, it's because little poop particles get up your nostrils. That's depressing.
I'm going to think about that every time now.
Yeah, me too. It's like, I
hate this article even more now.
Yeah, I'm going to tape my nose shut. I'm going to do my own study. I'm going to tape my nose shut and see how depressed I get. Study. Just tape our noses shut, see how depressed we get. I already can barely breathe through my nose. I have just like a chronic sinus infection. So yeah, what are you going to do? Well,
that pretty sums it up pretty much for this episode.
That pretty sums much of it up.
Yeah. Jibbity job.
Jibbity job. Demons Within, September 19th. Gripping crime thriller. I don't even know when this episode comes out, but I know the book's not out yet, but keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and don't smell anything, though.
All right?
No, you should smell, I fucked it up.
Oh, fuck it.
Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, smell everything in sight so you don't get depressed, and we'll see you.
And you is.
Job, Peter.
Job.